Blood dripped from his knuckles onto white marble floors while Chicago's most dangerous man stared at her through shattered glass. And for the first time in his brutal life, Damian Blackwood felt something stronger than violence. Her name was Amelia Hart, and 3 minutes ago she watched him break a man's arm without hesitation. Now she stood frozen among bodies and broken bakery windows, realizing the quiet customer she'd fallen for was actually the head of America's most feared criminal empire. He confessed everything, the syndicate, the murders, the wars, then admitted the one truth that terrified him more than any enemy. I fell in love with you the moment you smiled into my car window. This is their story. A crime king, a baker, and the impossible love that turned Chicago's underworld upside down. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. But on a cold Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago, Amelia Hart was running late again. Her blonde hair hung damp against her neck from a shower she'd rushed through in 4 minutes flat. Her cream-colored blouse was half untucked on one side, the other side twisted near the buttons. Her lipstick, the nice one she only wore on days when she needed the confidence boost, rolled loose somewhere at the bottom of her leather purse, probably leaking onto old receipts and gum wrappers. She hated being late, hated the way it made her chest tight and her thoughts scattered, hated how it confirmed what her mother always said. Amelia, you're a beautiful disaster waiting to happen. The sidewalks were packed with morning commuters. Suits, briefcases, coffee cups. Everyone moving with the kind of cold efficiency Chicago demanded from its people. Amelia pushed through them with her head down, muttering apologies she didn't mean, her breath coming out in short white clouds against the freezing air. Then she saw her reflection in a storefront window and stopped dead. She looked terrible. Hair everywhere, blouse a mess. No lipstick. The bags under her eyes made her look like she'd been awake for 3 days straight, which wasn't far from the truth. She'd spent last night helping her landlord's daughter with algebra homework because the kid was failing and Amelia couldn't say no to people who needed help. Get it together, she whispered to herself. That was when she noticed the car. A black armored Maybach sat at the curb directly in front of her, silent and imposing like something out of a mobster film. Its tinted windows reflected the city skyline with perfect clarity, dark glass so clean it worked better than any mirror Amelia owned. She glanced around. No driver. No one nearby. Just the car sitting there like an expensive statue. Amelia stepped closer and used the window as a mirror. She pulled the lipstick from her purse, applied it carefully, pressing her lips together twice to set the color. Then she smoothed her blonde curls with both hands, fixed her blouse, adjusted her collar, and smiled at her reflection. There she is, she whispered, feeling a little better, a little more like herself. What Amelia didn't know was that someone was watching. Inside the Maybach, Damian Blackwood sat in absolute silence. He'd been on his way to a meeting, the kind of meeting where men disappeared if they said the wrong thing. When his driver stopped at a red light, Damian had been reviewing financial reports on his tablet, half-focused, when movement outside the window caught his attention. A woman, blonde, fixing her appearance using his car window as a mirror. Damian should have looked away. He didn't. There was something about her smile, genuine, warm, unguarded, that hit him like a fist to the chest. She wasn't smiling for anyone else. She was smiling for herself, proud, confident, happy. Damian Blackwood hadn't seen anyone smile like that in years. He leaned forward slightly, studying her through the tinted glass. She was beautiful, yes, but that wasn't what held his attention. It was the warmth, the lightness, the complete absence of fear. His world didn't have women like that. His world had blood, deals, enemies, violence. Women who smiled at him because they wanted power or money or protection. Women who calculated every word they spoke in his presence. But this woman didn't know who he was. She just smiled at herself, tucked her lipstick away, and walked off down the sidewalk like she owned the morning. Damian watched until she disappeared into the crowd. Then he did something he never did. He asked his driver to follow her. "Sir?" the driver asked, confused. "Follow her," Damian repeated quietly. "Don't get close. Just tell me where she goes." The Maybach pulled smoothly into traffic. 3 blocks later, the blonde woman stopped in front of a small bakery tucked between a coffee shop and a dry cleaner. The sign above the door read, "Honey and Hearth," in faded gold letters. She unlocked the front door, slipped inside, and flipped the lights on. Through the window, Damien watched her tie an apron around her waist and start preparing the shop for opening. A baker. She was a baker. Damien sat back in his seat and stared at the bakery like it was the most dangerous place in Chicago, because for the first time in his life, he wanted something that had nothing to do with power. Makats. By noon, Damien knew everything about her. Amelia Rose Hart, 26 years old, American. Born in a small town in Indiana, moved to Chicago 3 years ago. No criminal record, no debts, no connections to his world. She worked 6 days a week at Honey and Hearth, lived in a modest apartment in Lincoln Park, and volunteered at a community center on Sundays. Completely ordinary. And that was exactly what fascinated him. Damien Blackwood had built an empire on fear. He controlled drug routes, weapons shipments, and underground gambling operations across 5 states. Politicians called him for favors. Crime families paid him tribute. His enemies ended up in rivers or abandoned warehouses with bullets in their heads. He was 34 years old and owned half of Chicago's criminal underworld. But sitting in his penthouse office 70 floors above the city, staring at Amelia Hart's background report, Damien felt something he hadn't felt in years. Loneliness. Not the kind of loneliness that came from being alone. Damien was surrounded by people constantly. Bodyguards, lieutenants, business associates, women who threw themselves at him for a taste of his power. No, this was the kind of loneliness that came from being seen but never known. Everyone feared him. No one understood him, except maybe this blonde baker who smiled at her reflection like the world wasn't a terrible place. Damien closed the report and made a decision that would change everything. He was going to meet her. The next morning, Damien walked into Honey and Hearth, wearing a black wool coat, black leather gloves, and the kind of quiet intensity that made normal people step aside instinctively. The bakery was small and warm, smelling like butter, cinnamon, and fresh bread. A few customers sat at tables near the window, sipping coffee and reading newspapers. Behind the counter stood Amelia, her blonde hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, flour dusting her apron. She looked up when the door chimed. Her eyes met his. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Amelia smiled, bright, friendly, completely unaware of who he was, and said, "Morning, what can I get you?" Damien approached the counter slowly, his hands in his coat pockets. Up close, she was even more beautiful than he remembered. Blue eyes, light freckles across her nose, a small scar near her left eyebrow that made her face interesting instead of perfect. "Coffee," he said quietly. "Black." "Straight to the point," Amelia said, already reaching for a cup. "I like it. Most people come in here and spend 5 minutes deciding between lattes and cappuccinos like it's a life or death choice." Damien almost smiled. "I don't do complicated." "Yeah, I can tell," Amelia said, pouring his coffee. "You've got that whole mysterious CEO who fires people before breakfast vibe going on." "Is that what I look like?" "Definitely. You're either a corporate shark or a spy. Maybe both." She handed him the coffee and leaned against the counter. "Let me guess. You drink black coffee because you think cream and sugar are for weak people." Damien stared at her. No one talked to him like this, ever, and he had no idea how to respond. Amelia laughed. "Relax, I'm just messing with you. You looked so serious when you walked in, I figured you could use some teasing." "I'm always serious," Damien said. "That sounds exhausting." "It is." Amelia tilted her head, studying him. "Well, mysterious coffee man, if you ever want to try something less exhausting, I make a mean cinnamon roll. Might change your life." Damien picked up his coffee and left a $20 bill on the counter. "Keep the change," he said, then walked out. Behind him, Amelia stared at the 20 and muttered, "What the hell?" Damien came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Every morning, same time, same order. Black coffee. No conversation beyond the transaction. He'd sit at the corner table near the window, drink slowly, and leave without saying goodbye. Amelia found it strange at first, then intriguing, then slightly annoying. On the 5th day, she confronted him. "Okay, I have to ask," Amelia said, setting his coffee down harder than necessary. Why do you keep coming here? Damien looked up from his phone. The coffee's good. Bull. There are 40 coffee shops within 3 blocks of here, and half of them are fancier than this place. So what's the real reason? Damien held her gaze for a long moment. Then he said, You. Amelia blinked. Me? You smiled at me the first day I walked in here. Most people don't. That's literally my job. No, Damien said quietly. Most people smile because it's their job. You smiled because you meant it. Amelia didn't know what to say to that. Something about the way he looked at her, tired, lonely, almost desperate, made her chest tighten. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat down without asking permission. Okay, mysterious coffee man. Let's start over. I'm Amelia. Damien. Nice to meet you, Damien. She stuck out her hand. He stared at it like she'd just offered him a live grenade. Then slowly, he shook it. His hand was warm, strong, scarred across the knuckles. So, Amelia said, pulling her hand back, what do you do that makes you so serious all the time? I run a business. What kind of business? Import and export. Amelia raised an eyebrow. That's the vaguest answer I've ever heard. You definitely sound like a spy now. Damien almost smiled. I'm not a spy. Corporate shark? Something like that. Amelia leaned back in her chair, studying him. You know what I think? I think you're lonely. Damien's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Everyone's lonely, he said. Yeah, but most people try to fix it. You just sit here every morning drinking bad coffee and looking like you're about to fire someone. The coffee's not bad. It's mediocre at best, and you know it. This time Damien did smile. Just barely, just enough for Amelia to notice. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Over the next 3 weeks, Damien kept coming back. But now he talked to her. Not about his real life, never about that, but about small things. Books, weather, the annoying customer who always complained about the croissants. Amelia told him about her dream of opening her own bakery someday, something bigger and brighter than Honey and Hearth. Damien listened like every word mattered, and slowly, against every instinct he'd built over the years, he let himself care about her. He didn't mean to. He knew it was dangerous, knew it would complicate everything. But Amelia made him feel human again, and Damien had forgotten what that felt like. One morning, she made him try a cinnamon roll. You're going to eat this, she said, setting the plate down in front of him. And you're going to admit it's better than black coffee. Damien stared at the pastry. I don't eat sugar. Of course you don't. Because sugar is for weak people, right? Something like that. Just try it. 1 bite. If you hate it, I'll never bother you again. Damien picked up the cinnamon roll and took a small bite. It was perfect. Warm, sweet, soft. Amelia grinned. I knew it. You like it. It's acceptable, Damien said. You're lying. I can see it in your face. Damien set the roll down and looked at her seriously. Why do you care if I like your food? Amelia's smile faded slightly. Because you look like someone who doesn't let himself enjoy anything. And I think that's sad. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. Damien stared at her for a long moment, then stood up and dropped another 20 on the table. Thank you, he said quietly. Then he walked out before she could respond. But the next morning, he came back. And this time, he ordered a cinnamon roll with his coffee. By the end of the month, Amelia realized she was falling for him. It terrified her. Damien was everything she shouldn't want. Cold, distant, emotionally unavailable. He never talked about his family, his friends, or his life outside the bakery. He showed up, talked to her for 20 minutes, then disappeared like a ghost. But there was something underneath the coldness, something broken and lonely and desperate for connection. Amelia recognized it because she'd felt it too. One Friday night after closing, Amelia was locking up the bakery when Damien appeared beside her on the sidewalk. She jumped. Jesus, you scared me. Sorry. How long have you been standing there? A few minutes. Amelia stared at him. That's creepy, you know that? I know. So why are you here? Damien hesitated. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. I wanted to ask you something, he said. Okay. Would you have dinner with me? Amelia's heart kicked hard against her ribs. Like a date? Yes. She should have said no. Every instinct told her this man was dangerous. But when she looked into his eyes, all she saw was loneliness. Okay, she said. Tomorrow night. Damien nodded once. I'll pick you up at 7. Then he walked away before she could change her mind. Amelia stood there on the empty sidewalk, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. Cheb. The next night, a black Maybach pulled up outside her apartment at exactly 7 o'clock. Amelia almost didn't get in. But then Damien stepped out of the car wearing a black suit that probably cost more than her rent, and something about the way he looked at her, nervous, hopeful, terrified, made her decision. She got in. They drove to a restaurant Amelia had only seen in magazines. Private, expensive, the kind of place where politicians and CEOs made deals that shaped the city. Damien had reserved the entire back room, just the two of them. This is too much, Amelia said as they sat down. I wanted privacy. Normal people go to normal restaurants. I'm not normal people, Amelia laughed despite herself. Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. Dinner was strange, intimate. Damien asked her questions about her childhood, her dreams, her favorite memories. He listened like he was memorizing every word, and slowly, carefully, he started answering her questions too. He told her about growing up in Chicago, about losing his parents young, about building his business from nothing. He didn't tell her what the business actually was. Amelia didn't push. By the time dessert arrived, she realized she was enjoying herself more than she had in years. Can I ask you something personal? Amelia said. Yes. Why me? I'm just a baker. You could have anyone. Damien set down his fork and looked at her seriously. Because when you smiled at your reflection in my car window, you looked happy. Really happy. I haven't seen that in a long time. And he hesitated. I wanted to know what that felt like. Amelia's chest tightened. You don't smile much, do you? She said softly. No. Maybe you should try it sometime. Damien held her gaze. Maybe you could teach me. They left the restaurant an hour later, and Damien walked her back to the car with his hand resting lightly on her lower back. It was the first time he'd touched her beyond a handshake. Amelia's skin burned where his hand rested. In the car, the silence felt different, charged. When they pulled up outside her apartment, Amelia turned to him. Do you want to come up? Damien stared at her. Are you sure? No, but I'm asking anyway. He followed her upstairs. Her apartment was small, messy, nothing like the places Damien owned. But when Amelia turned on the lights and offered him tea, he felt more at home than he had in years. They sat on her couch, talking until midnight. And when Amelia finally leaned over and kissed him, Damien kissed her back like a man who'd been drowning and just found air. For the first time in his life, Damien Blackwood felt something stronger than violence. He felt hope, but hope was dangerous for men like him. 3 days later, everything changed. Amelia was closing the bakery alone. Her coworker had called in sick when the front door burst open. 4 men wearing black masks stormed inside. Amelia screamed. One of them grabbed her arm and slammed her against the counter. Where is he? Where's who? Amelia gasped, struggling. Damien Blackwood. Where the fuck is he? Amelia's blood went cold. I don't know anyone named... The man hit her across the face. Amelia tasted blood. Her vision blurred. She heard someone shouting, felt hands dragging her toward the door. Then the bakery windows exploded inward. Glass shattered everywhere. Gunfire erupted through the small space. Amelia hit the floor, covering her head, unable to process what was happening. Through the chaos, she heard voices, orders, the sound of bodies hitting the ground, then silence. Someone crouched beside her. Amelia! She looked up. Damien knelt there, covered in blood, breathing hard. His eyes were wild, terrified. Not for himself, for her. Are you hurt? He demanded, checking her face, her arms, her ribs. I don't... What's happening? Who were those men? They said your name. Damien pulled her to her feet and wrapped his coat around her shoulders. Behind him, Amelia saw bodies on the floor. His men standing guard. Broken glass everywhere. We need to leave, Damien said. Right now. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what the hell is going on. Damien stared at her, and for the first time she saw real fear in his eyes. I'm not who you think I am, he said quietly. Then who are you? The head of the Blackwood Syndicate, one of the most powerful crime families in America. Amelia stopped breathing. Damien kept talking, his voice steady but raw. I run drugs, weapons, money. I control half the criminal operations in this city. People fear me. People die because of me. I've killed men with my own hands. I'm everything you should be terrified of. Amelia stepped back. You lied to me. Yes. This whole time, yes. Why? Damien's jaw tightened. Because the moment you smiled at your reflection in my car window, I fell in love with you, and I wanted one thing in my life that wasn't soaked in blood. Amelia stared at him, her mind spinning. This man, the quiet coffee drinker, the lonely businessman, the person she'd kissed 3 nights ago, was a crime lord, a killer, a monster. And he loved her. Before she could respond, Damien's phone buzzed. He answered it, listened for 3 seconds, then his entire expression changed. Get her out of here, he said to one of his men. Now. What's happening? Amelia demanded. Damien looked at her with something close to desperation. War, he said. Then the second wave of gunfire started outside. Gunfire erupted through the street outside Honey and Hearth like thunder tearing through a cemetery. Amelia's ears rang. Her hands shook so violently she couldn't feel her fingers. Damien grabbed her arm and pulled her behind the counter as bullets punched through the front windows, ripping apart everything they touched. Wood splintered. Glass exploded. The espresso machine burst open, spraying hot water and steam across the floor. Stay down, Damien ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Amelia couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 3 minutes ago, she'd been locking up her bakery. Now she was crouched behind a counter while men with guns tried to kill each other in the middle of downtown Chicago. One of Damien's men, tall, bald, built like a tank, fired back through the broken windows with cold precision. Shell casings hit the floor beside Amelia's feet, still hot, rolling across the tile. How many? Damien shouted. 8 outside, maybe more in vehicles. Damien cursed under his breath, then looked at Amelia. His face was hard, controlled, but his eyes betrayed him. He was terrified. Not of the bullets, not of the men trying to kill him, of losing her. Listen to me, Damien said, gripping her shoulders. Marcus is going to get you out through the back. He'll take you to a safe location. You'll be protected. I promise. What about you? Amelia's voice cracked. I'll handle this. You mean you'll kill them? Damien didn't deny it. Yes. Amelia stared at him. At this man she'd kissed 3 nights ago. This man who drank black coffee and listened to her talk about cinnamon rolls like they were the most important thing in the world. This stranger. This killer. I don't know you, she whispered. Something broke in Damien's expression. I know. More gunfire. Closer now. The bald man, Marcus, grabbed Amelia's arm. We need to move. Now. Damien released her and stood up, pulling a gun from inside his coat with the kind of ease that came from years of practice. He didn't look at her again. Marcus dragged Amelia toward the back door. Behind her, she heard Damien's voice, cold and lethal. Kill anyone who follows her. Then the door slammed shut, and Amelia was running through an alley she'd walked past 1,000 times. Only now, it felt like a war zone. Marcus shoved her into the back seat of a black SUV parked 2 blocks away. The engine was already running. The windows were tinted so dark Amelia couldn't see outside. Where are we going? She demanded. Marcus didn't answer. He just drove. Fast. Amelia pressed her hands against her face and tried not to scream. The safe house was a penthouse in the financial district, 70th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, leather furniture, marble counters, the kind of place that cost more per month than Amelia made in a year. Marcus led her inside and locked the door behind them. You'll stay here until Mr. Blackwood gives the all clear, he said. How long will that take? As long as it takes. That's not an answer. Marcus looked at her with the kind of patience you'd give a child asking stupid questions. You're safe here. That's all you need to know. Amelia wanted to argue, wanted to scream, wanted to run out the door and pretend tonight never happened. Instead, she walked to the window and stared down at the city lights below. Somewhere down there, Damien was fighting a war. Because of her. He arrived 3 hours later. The door opened and Damien walked in covered in blood. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was torn at the shoulder. His knuckles were split open and bruised purple. But he was alive. Amelia stood up from the couch, her heart hammering. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Whose blood is that?" "Not mine." He said it like it didn't matter. Like wearing another man's blood was just part of the job. Amelia's stomach twisted. "Did you kill them?" Damien stopped in the middle of the room and looked at her directly. "Yes." No hesitation, no remorse, just the truth. Amelia wrapped her arms around herself. "How many?" "Does it matter?" "Yes." Damien's jaw tightened. 4. 4 people are dead because of me. 4 people are dead because they tried to kill you. That's not the same thing. In my world, it is. Amelia laughed bitterly. Your world. Your world just destroyed my entire life. Damien flinched like she'd slapped him. The silence between them felt like broken glass. Finally, Damien spoke, his voice quieter now. "I know you're scared. I know you hate me right now. But you need to understand something. The people who attacked tonight weren't random. They knew exactly where to find you. They knew you mattered to me." "How?" "Because I've been careless. I let myself care about you, and in my world, caring about someone is the same as painting a target on their back." Amelia stared at him. "So what now? I hide here forever?" "Until I figure out who sent them and make sure it doesn't happen again." "And then what? I go back to my normal life and pretend you're not a crime lord?" Damien didn't answer. Amelia shook her head, exhausted. "I need to think. Alone." Damien nodded once and left the room without another word. When the door closed behind him, Amelia collapsed onto the couch and let herself cry for the first time all night. She woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back in. The gunfight, the blood, Damien's confession, and her chest tightened all over again. Amelia walked into the kitchen and found Damien standing by the counter pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He'd showered, changed into clean clothes, but the bruises on his knuckles were still dark and angry. "You didn't sleep," Amelia said. "No." "Why not?" "Because I needed to make sure you were safe." He handed her a mug, black coffee, the way he drank it. Amelia took it without thinking, then realized what she was holding. "You remember how I take my coffee. I remember everything about you." Something about the way he said it, quiet, raw, almost broken, made Amelia's anger waver. She sat down at the counter. "Tell me the truth. All of it. No more lies." Damien leaned against the counter across from her and started talking. He told her about his parents dying in a car accident when he was 16, about growing up on Chicago's South Side, surrounded by violence and poverty, about being recruited into the Blackwood Syndicate when he was 17 because he was smart and ruthless and had nothing to lose. He told her how he'd worked his way up through the organization, earning respect through strategy and brutality, how he'd taken control of the syndicate at 28 after the previous leader made the mistake of underestimating him. He told her about the businesses he ran, drugs, weapons, money laundering, illegal gambling, about the enemies he'd made, the wars he'd fought, the people he'd killed. "I'm not a good man," Damien said quietly. "I've done things that would make you sick. But I've never lied to you about who I am underneath the surface. The man who sat in your bakery every morning and listened to you talk about cinnamon rolls, that was real. You made me feel human again, and I fell in love with you for it." Amelia set down her coffee mug. Her hands were shaking. "You can't love me? You don't even know me. I know you volunteer at a community center every Sunday. I know you give free pastries to homeless people when you think no one's watching. I know you cried when your landlord's daughter got an A on her algebra test. I know you smile at strangers because you think kindness matters. You had someone follow me." "Yes. That's insane." "I know." Amelia laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is insane. All of it. I should walk out that door right now and never look back." "You should," Damien agreed, "but you won't." "Why not?" "Because you feel it too." Amelia opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Because he was right. She felt it. This impossible pull between them. This connection that made no sense but refused to go away. She hated him for lying, hated him for dragging her into his world, hated him for making her feel things she had no business feeling. But she didn't hate him enough to leave, and that terrified her more than anything. For the next 2 days, Amelia stayed in the penthouse. Damien came and went, handling business she didn't want to know about. Marcus stood guard outside the door like a statue, and Amelia paced the apartment like a caged animal, her mind spinning in circles. She thought about calling the police, about turning Damien in, about running as far away from Chicago as she could. But every time she came close to making that decision, she remembered the way he'd looked at her when the bullets started flying. Terrified. Not for himself. For her. No one had ever looked at her like that before. On the third morning, Damien walked into the kitchen and set a folder on the counter in front of her. "What's this?" Amelia asked. "Information on the men who attacked you." Amelia opened the folder slowly. Inside were photographs, names, criminal records. The 4 men Damien had killed were members of a rival syndicate called the Crow Organization, run by a man named Vincent Crow. "Vincent's been trying to take over my territory for years," Damien explained. "He failed every time. So now he's targeting you instead." "Why me?" "Because he knows I care about you. And in my world, caring about someone is a weakness." Amelia stared at the photographs. "So this isn't over?" "No. How do we stop it?" "I stop it. You stay safe." "That's not fair. None of this is fair." Amelia slammed the folder shut. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be dragged into your war." "I know, and I'm sorry." Damien's voice was rough. "If I could go back and change things, I would. But I can't. So all I can do now is keep you alive." "What if I don't want to be kept alive? What if I want my life back?" "You can't have it back, not anymore." The truth of it hit Amelia like a punch to the chest. Her bakery was destroyed. Her apartment wasn't safe. Her entire life had been burned to the ground in one night. Because of him. "I hate you," she whispered. Damien nodded slowly. "I know." Then he walked out of the room, leaving Amelia alone with the photographs of dead men and the weight of everything she'd lost. That night, Amelia couldn't sleep. She stood by the window, staring down at the city, wondering how her life had spiraled so completely out of control in less than a week. Behind her, the door opened quietly. Damien stepped inside. He didn't say anything, just stood there in the darkness, watching her. "Why are you here?" Amelia asked without turning around. "I couldn't sleep either." "Guilty conscience?" "Something like that." Amelia finally turned to face him. "Do you regret meeting me?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. "No." "Even though it's destroyed everything?" "Even then." "Why?" "Because before I met you, I was already dead. I just hadn't stopped moving yet." Amelia's throat tightened. She wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to her hatred because it was easier than admitting the truth. But standing there in the darkness, looking at this broken, dangerous man who'd killed 4 people to keep her safe, Amelia realized something terrifying. She was falling in love with him, not despite what he was, but because underneath the violence and the blood, she saw the same loneliness she felt every time she woke up alone in her apartment. "This is insane," Amelia whispered. "I know. I should hate you. You should. But I don't." Damien crossed the room slowly, stopping just a few feet away from her. "Tell me to leave. Right now. Tell me to walk away and never come back." Amelia opened her mouth. No words came out. Damien stepped closer. "Amelia, tell me to leave." She couldn't. So instead, she kissed him. Hard, desperate, angry. Damien kissed her back like a man drowning, his hands sliding into her hair, pulling her closer. Amelia tasted coffee on his lips and something darker, violence maybe, or grief. She didn't care. She kissed him harder, her fingers digging into his shoulders, trying to pull him close enough to stop the ache in her chest. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "This doesn't change anything," Amelia said. "I know. I'm still angry. I know. But I'm not leaving." Damien rested his forehead against hers. You should. Too late. For the first time in days, Damien almost smiled. Basham. The next morning, everything changed again. Amelia woke up to shouting. She stumbled out of the bedroom and found Damien in the living room, his phone pressed to his ear, his face carved from stone. When? He demanded. A pause. How many? Another pause. I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at Amelia. I have to leave. What happened? Vincent Crow just hit 3 of my warehouses simultaneously. He's trying to force me into a war. Then don't give him one. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Walk away. Let him have the warehouses. Stop fighting. Damien stared at her like she'd just suggested he cut off his own arm. If I walk away, I lose everything. My territory, my reputation, my power. And the second I look weak, every enemy I've ever made will come for me, including Vincent. So what's the alternative? You kill each other until there's no one left? If that's what it takes. Amelia felt something inside her crack. You told me you fell in love with me, but you're choosing this. You're choosing violence. I'm choosing to keep you alive. By becoming the monster everyone thinks you are? Damien's jaw tightened. I am the monster everyone thinks I am. I always have been. You just didn't want to see it. The words hit Amelia like a slap. Damien grabbed his coat and headed for the door. Wait, Amelia said. He stopped, but didn't turn around. If you leave now, I won't be here when you get back. Damien's shoulders tensed. For a moment, Amelia thought he might turn around, might choose her over the war. Instead, he said, Marcus will keep you safe. Then he walked out. The door closed behind him with a finality that made Amelia's chest ache. She stood there in the middle of the penthouse, alone, realizing she'd just lost the only person who'd made her feel seen in years. And the worst part was, she still loved him. Marcus tried to stop her. You can't leave, he said, blocking the door. Watch me. Mr. Blackwood gave explicit orders. I don't work for Mr. Blackwood. Get out of my way. Marcus didn't move. It's not safe out there. I don't care. He'll kill me if anything happens to you. Then you better follow me. Amelia pushed past him and walked out into the hallway. Marcus cursed under his breath and followed. 30 minutes later, Amelia stood outside the ruins of Honey and Hearth. The bakery was destroyed. Windows shattered, bullet holes in the walls, yellow police tape stretched across the front door. A sign posted by the city declared the building condemned. Everything she'd worked for, gone. Amelia felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. We should go, Marcus said quietly. This location isn't secure. Just give me a minute. Marcus scanned the street, his hand resting on the gun hidden beneath his jacket. Amelia stepped closer to the broken windows and stared inside at the wreckage. This was supposed to be her dream, her escape, her proof that she could build something beautiful in a city that chewed people up and spit them out. Now it was just another casualty of Damien's war. Behind her, Marcus suddenly went rigid. We need to leave. Now. Why? Because we're being watched. Amelia turned around. Across the street, a black sedan sat idling at the curb. Tinted windows, engine running, no license plates. Marcus grabbed her arm. Move. They made it 3 steps before the sedan's doors opened. 4 men stepped out. Marcus shoved Amelia behind him and pulled his gun. Get back inside the building. What's happening? Now. But before Amelia could move, one of the men raised his hand. He was holding a phone, and on the screen was a photograph of Amelia and Damien, together, kissing. The man smiled. Vincent Crow sends his regards. Then everything went black. Amelia woke up in darkness. Her head throbbed, her wrists burned. When she tried to move, she realized her hands were tied behind her back, secured to a metal chair. Panic hit her like ice water. She blinked hard, trying to adjust to the darkness. Slowly, shapes emerged from the shadows. Concrete walls. A single bulb hanging from the ceiling. Industrial shelving units stacked with boxes. A warehouse. Footsteps echoed across the concrete floor. A man stepped into the light. He was tall, lean, mid-40s, with graying hair and cold blue eyes. He wore an expensive suit and smiled like he was meeting an old friend. "Amelia Hart," he said warmly. "I've heard so much about you." Amelia's throat was dry. "Who are you?" "Vincent Crowe. I'm sure Damien's mentioned me." Fear clawed at Amelia's chest. "What do you want?" "Simple. I want Damien Blackwood to suffer." Vincent pulled up a chair and sat down across from her. "For years I've tried to take his territory, his businesses, his power, and every single time he's beaten me. Do you know why?" Amelia didn't answer. "Because Damien doesn't care about anything. He has no weaknesses, no attachments, no one he loves." Vincent leaned forward. "Until now." "He'll kill you," Amelia whispered. "Oh, I'm counting on it. In fact, I've already called him, told him exactly where you are. He's on his way right now." Vincent smiled. "And when he gets here, he's going to have to make a choice. His empire, or you." "He'll choose his empire." "Will he?" Amelia wanted to say yes, wanted to believe Damien would choose power over her, but she couldn't, because deep down she knew the truth. Damien would burn his entire world to the ground to save her, and Vincent Crowe knew it too. "You see," Vincent continued, "the moment Damien trades his empire for you, every syndicate in America will know he's weak, and weak men don't survive in our world. He'll lose everything, his territory, his reputation, his life." "So you win either way," Amelia said bitterly. "Exactly." Vincent stood up and walked toward the door. "I'll leave you to think about that, about how your relationship with Damien Blackwood just destroyed everything he's ever built." Then he left her alone in the darkness. Amelia sat there, her wrists bleeding against the rope, her mind racing. This was her fault. If she'd never smiled at her reflection in Damien's car window, if she'd never talked to him in the bakery, if she'd never fallen for him, none of this would have happened. In the distance, she heard the sound of cars pulling up outside, engines cutting off, doors slamming, then silence. Amelia's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Somewhere outside, Damien Blackwood was about to make a choice that would define the rest of his life, and Amelia had no idea which option terrified her more. The warehouse door exploded inward with a sound like the earth splitting open. Amelia flinched hard against the ropes binding her wrists, her breath coming in short gasps. Through the darkness, she heard boots on concrete, orders being shouted, the metallic click of weapons being raised. Then silence. Damien stepped through the doorway. He was alone. No army, no backup. Just him, wearing all black, his hands empty and raised in surrender. Amelia's chest tightened so hard she thought her ribs might crack. "I'm here," Damien called out, his voice echoing through the warehouse. "Let her go." Vincent Crowe emerged from the shadows behind Amelia's chair, clapping slowly. "Damien Blackwood, right on time, and unarmed, just like I asked. I'm impressed." "Where is she?" Vincent gestured toward Amelia. Damien's eyes found her immediately. Even across the distance, even in the dim light, Amelia saw the fear in his expression. Raw, desperate, the kind of fear that made dangerous men do stupid things. "Let her go," Damien repeated. "Of course. Right after you sign a few documents." Vincent pulled a folder from inside his jacket and tossed it at Damien's feet. "Territory agreements, transfer of assets, financial accounts, everything I've been trying to take from you for years. Sign it all over to me and she walks out of here alive." Damien stared down at the folder. "You'll have won." "Yes. Every syndicate in the country will know I gave up my empire for a woman." "Yes. I'll be dead within a week." Vincent smiled. "Probably less." Amelia felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Don't do it." Damien looked at her. "Be quiet. He's going to kill you anyway. Don't give him what he wants." "I said be quiet." But Amelia couldn't stop. "You told me you built this empire from nothing. You told me it's everything you have. Don't throw it away for me." Damien walked closer, his boots echoing across the concrete, until he stood directly in front of her chair. He crouched down so they were eye level. "Do you know what I realized?" he said quietly. "The empire doesn't mean anything if you're not in it." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "I know. You're going to die." "I know that too." Amelia shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. I'm not worth it. Damien reached out and wiped the tears from her cheek with his thumb, his touch so gentle it broke something inside her. You're worth everything, he whispered. Then he stood up, picked up the folder, and signed every document inside without reading a single word. Vincent laughed. I didn't think you'd actually do it. Damien Blackwood, the most ruthless crime lord in Chicago, giving up everything for a baker. I gave you what you wanted. Now let her go. Vincent walked over and took the folder from Damien's hands, flipping through the signed documents with satisfaction. This is better than I imagined. By tomorrow morning, every syndicate boss in America will know you traded your empire for pussy. You'll be a joke, a cautionary tale. I don't care. Let her go. Vincent nodded to one of his men. Cut her loose. The man stepped forward with a knife and sliced through the ropes binding Amelia's wrists. She gasped as blood rushed back into her hands, pins and needles shooting up her arms. Damien pulled her to her feet and wrapped his arms around her. Are you hurt? No. Can you walk? Yes. Then run, right now. Don't look back. Amelia stared up at him. What about you? I'll be right behind you. He was lying. She could see it in his eyes. Damien, run. Before Amelia could argue, gunfire erupted through the warehouse. But not from Vincent's men. From outside. The windows along the warehouse's upper level exploded inward as masked figures rappelled down on ropes, firing with brutal precision. Vincent's men scattered, returning fire, shouting orders that were drowned out by the chaos. Damien grabbed Amelia and pulled her behind a stack of metal crates. Stay down. What's happening? I don't know. More gunfire. Bodies hitting the ground. Someone screaming. Through the smoke and chaos, a woman stepped into the warehouse. She was tall, elegant, wearing a black designer dress and heels that clicked against the concrete like a countdown. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun. Her lips were painted blood red. She walked through the gunfire like she was walking through a garden party. Vincent turned toward her, his face going pale. Victoria? The woman smiled. Hello, Vincent. Amelia looked at Damien. Who is she? Damien's expression had gone completely cold. My fiancée. Amelia's world tilted sideways. Your what? It's not what you think. You have a fiancé? It's complicated. That's not an answer. Before Damien could respond, Victoria stopped directly in front of Vincent Crowe. Two of her men flanked her, their weapons trained on Vincent's skull. You tried to play both sides, Victoria said calmly. You promised me you'd destroy Damien. Instead, you gave him an opportunity to look noble. That was stupid, Vincent. Vincent raised his hand slowly. We can work something out. No, we can't. Victoria pulled a gun from her purse and shot Vincent Crowe in the chest. He dropped to his knees, blood spreading across his expensive suit, his eyes wide with shock. Victoria shot him again, this time in the head. His body collapsed onto the concrete with a wet thud. Amelia felt bile rising in her throat. Victoria turned toward Damien, her expression unreadable. Hello, darling. We need to talk. Damien stepped in front of Amelia protectively. This isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you traded your entire empire for some blonde girl you've known for a month. Victoria tilted her head, studying Amelia like she was a piece of furniture. She's pretty. I'll give you that. But pretty doesn't build dynasties, Damien. I never agreed to marry you. Your father agreed 20 years ago. That's binding enough. My father's been dead for 18 years, and yet the agreement still stands. Victoria walked closer, her heels clicking ominously. The Sterling family and the Blackwood family were supposed to unite. That was the deal. I've been waiting since I was 16 for you to honor it. I don't love you. Love has nothing to do with marriage. Not in our world. Victoria glanced at Amelia again. You should know that by now. Amelia felt her stomach drop. You knew about this? Damien didn't answer. You knew, Amelia repeated, her voice breaking. You knew you were promised to someone else, and you pursued me anyway. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You lied to me. Again. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you. That's the same thing. Victoria laughed softly. I like her. She has spirit. Unfortunately, she also has a death sentence. She raised her gun and pointed it directly at Amelia's chest. Nothing personal, sweetheart, but you're a complication I don't need. Damien moved so fast Amelia barely saw it. He stepped between Victoria and Amelia, his body acting as a human shield. If you want to shoot her, you'll have to go through me first. Victoria's smile faded. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm telling you the truth. You pull that trigger, and I'll kill you before your body hits the ground. You'd choose her over your family legacy? Yes. Over your empire? I already did. Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she lowered the gun. You're serious? Yes. You really do love her? Yes. Victoria's expression twisted into something ugly. Then you're weaker than I thought. She turned to one of her men. Kill them both. The man raised his weapon. Damien lunged forward, disarming him in two brutal moves. The gun clattered to the ground. Damien caught it mid-fall, spun, and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. Victoria's men dropped, but more flooded in from the exits. 8, 10, 12, too many. Damien grabbed Amelia's hand and ran. They crashed through a side door into a narrow hallway. Behind them, footsteps pounded against concrete. Shouts echoed through the building. Gunfire erupted again, bullets punching holes through the metal walls around them. Damien shoved Amelia through another door into what looked like an old office. He slammed it shut and dragged a filing cabinet in front of it. That won't hold them long, Amelia gasped, her lungs burning. I know. What do we do? Damien looked around the room. One window, barred, no other exits. They were trapped. I'm sorry, Damien said quietly. Amelia stared at him. For what? For all of it. For dragging you into this. For lying about Victoria. For being exactly the monster you said I was. You're not a monster. Yes, I am. Then what does that make me? Because I'm still here. I'm still choosing you. Damien pulled her close and kissed her hard, desperate, like it might be the last time. When they broke apart, the door shuddered as something heavy slammed against it from the other side. I need you to promise me something, Damien said. What? If I don't make it out of here, you run, you disappear, you change your name and move somewhere they'll never find you. I'm not leaving you. Amelia, I said I'm not leaving you. The door burst open. Victoria stepped through, surrounded by armed men. Her dress was still perfect, her lipstick still flawless, but her eyes were cold enough to freeze blood. This is embarrassing, she said. I gave you a chance to walk away with dignity, Damien, but you chose the girl, so now I have to kill you both. You'll start a war, Damien said. My lieutenants won't let this go. Your lieutenants work for me now. I bought them out 3 weeks ago. They've been feeding me information about your movements, your weaknesses, your little obsession with this baker. How do you think Vincent knew exactly where to find her? Amelia felt the ground drop out from under her. You set this whole thing up. Of course I did. Vincent was an idiot, but he was a useful idiot. I needed someone Damien would view as the real threat while I worked behind the scenes. Victoria smiled. And it worked perfectly. You signed over your entire empire to Vincent, which means it now belongs to me. I killed Vincent, which makes me look like your savior. And now I'll kill you and take everything you built. Damien's jaw tightened. You planned this for months. Years, actually. I've been very patient. Why? Because I loved you once, really loved you, and you never even looked at me. But the moment some random baker smiled at you through a car window, you fell apart. Victoria's voice turned sharp. So yes, I'm going to take everything from you, your empire, your life, and her. She raised her gun again. This time Damien had nowhere to move. No weapon, no escape. Amelia stepped forward without thinking, putting herself between the gun and Damien. If you're going to shoot someone, shoot me first. Amelia, don't. Damien tried to pull her back. She wouldn't move. I mean it. You want to hurt him? Then make him watch me die first. Victoria stared at her for a long moment. Then she laughed. You really do love him. How pathetic. She pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the small room like thunder. Amelia felt the impact before she felt the pain. Her legs gave out. She collapsed to the floor, gasping, her hands pressing against her stomach where blood was already soaking through her shirt. Damien caught her before she hit the ground. No, 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 no. I'm okay, Amelia whispered, even though she wasn't. Stay with me. Please stay with me. I'm sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for. I should have run when you told me to. Don't talk, save your strength. But Amelia could already feel herself slipping away. Her vision blurred, her breathing slowed. The pain faded into something cold and distant. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Damien's face, twisted with grief and rage as he screamed her name. Amelia woke up in a hospital bed. Fluorescent lights burned her eyes. Machines beeped steadily beside her. Her stomach ached like someone had driven a knife through it. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through her abdomen, sharp and brutal. Don't move. Amelia turned her head. Marcus sat in a chair beside her bed, looking exhausted. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. What happened? Amelia's voice came out hoarse. You were shot. The bullet went through your stomach but missed all major organs. Doctors said you were lucky. Marcus didn't sound like he believed in luck anymore. You've been unconscious for 2 days. Where's Damien? Marcus didn't answer. Amelia's heart started pounding. Where is he, Marcus? Gone. What do you mean, gone? After Victoria shot you, something inside him broke. He killed everyone in that warehouse. Victoria, her men, all of them. Then he disappeared. Where? I don't know. No one does. He left instructions for me to keep you safe, then he vanished. Amelia felt tears streaming down her face. He's going to get himself killed. Probably. We have to find him. Miss Hart, with all due respect, Mr. Blackwood doesn't want to be found. And even if we could find him, there's nothing we could do. He's on a warpath. The only thing that matters to him now is revenge. Revenge against who? Victoria's dead. Marcus looked at her seriously. Everyone. He's burning down the entire criminal underworld because it took you away from him. Every syndicate, every family, every person who ever crossed him. He started a war that's going to kill thousands of people. Amelia stared at the ceiling, her chest tight with guilt and grief. This was her fault. If she'd never smiled at her reflection in that car window, if she'd never let herself fall for him, if she'd walked away when she had the chance, none of this would have happened. Damien Blackwood was destroying himself and everyone around him because of her. And the worst part was she had no idea how to stop him. Amelia discharged herself from the hospital against medical advice on the 3rd day. The doctors tried to stop her. Marcus tried to stop her. The nurses threatened to call security, but Amelia ripped the IV from her arm, pulled on the clothes Marcus had brought, and walked out of that hospital room with stitches still fresh in her abdomen and pain screaming through every step. She didn't care. Damien was out there somewhere, burning Chicago to the ground, and she was the only person who could stop him. Marcus caught up with her in the parking garage. You can barely walk. I'll manage. Miss Hart, you were shot 3 days ago. You need rest. What I need is to find Damien before he gets himself killed. He doesn't want to be found. Amelia turned on him, her face hard. I don't care what he wants. Take me to him. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. I don't know where he is. Then find someone who does. 20 minutes later, they were driving through Chicago's South Side in an unmarked SUV. Marcus made 3 phone calls, each one shorter and more tense than the last. Finally, on the 4th call, he got an address. One of his lieutenants thinks he knows where Damien's been staying, Marcus said, hanging up. But he warned me it's bad, really bad. How bad? Damien's not himself anymore. He's not eating, not sleeping, just killing anyone connected to the families that supported Victoria. He's completely lost control. Amelia's chest tightened. Then we need to get there fast. They pulled up outside an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city 15 minutes later. The building looked like it had been gutted by fire years ago. Windows broken, walls blackened, graffiti covering every available surface. Marcus parked and turned to Amelia. Last chance to turn back. Not happening. They walked inside together. The interior was worse than the exterior. Concrete floors stained with God knows what, rusted machinery scattered throughout, the smell of decay and smoke thick in the air. And blood. Fresh blood. Amelia followed Marcus through a maze of hallways until they reached what used to be the factory's main floor. Now it was something else entirely. A war room. Maps covered the walls, marked with red circles and crossed-out names. Weapons were stacked on tables. Guns, knives, explosives. Documents were scattered everywhere. Financial records and surveillance photos and lists of targets. And in the center of it all, standing with his back to them, was Damien. He looked like he'd been through hell. His clothes were filthy. His hair was a mess. Dried blood covered his hands and forearms. He was staring at a map of Chicago, his shoulders tense, his breathing uneven. "Damien," Amelia said softly. He didn't turn around. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should you. Leave, Amelia." "No." Finally, he turned to face her. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. He looked destroyed. His eyes were hollow. His face was gaunt. The man who used to sit in her bakery drinking black coffee and almost smiling was gone. In his place was someone unrecognizable, someone broken. "You were shot," Damien said, his voice rough. "You should be in a hospital. You should be too." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You look like you haven't slept in days." "I haven't." "Damien, I said leave." His voice turned sharp, dangerous. "I don't want you here." "Too bad." "I'm not leaving." Damien's jaw tightened. He looked at Marcus. "Get her out of here." Marcus didn't move. "With all due respect, sir, I think she's the only person who can help you right now. I don't need help. I need revenge." "Revenge against who?" Amelia stepped closer, ignoring the pain in her stomach. "Victoria's dead. Vincent's dead. You've already killed everyone involved." "Not everyone." Damien turned back to the map and pointed at several red circles. "The Sterling family supported Victoria. So did the Russo family and the Chen syndicate. They all knew what she was planning, and they let it happen, so now they pay." "By dying?" "Yes. That's insane. That's justice." "No," Amelia said firmly. "That's suicide. You kill 3 entire crime families and every organization in the country will come for you. You'll be dead within a week." Damien shrugged. "Then I'll be dead." The casual way he said it made Amelia's blood run cold. She walked up to him and grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to destroy yourself because you feel guilty." "Guilty?" Damien laughed bitterly. "I don't feel guilty. I feel nothing. You almost died because of me. You were shot because I was too weak to let you go. So now I'm fixing it." "By starting a war?" "By ending one. You can't kill everyone who's ever hurt you, Damien. That's not how this works." "Then how does it work?" He pulled away from her, his voice rising. "Tell me, Amelia, how do I fix this? How do I make up for the fact that loving you almost got you killed?" "You don't. You just live with it." "I can't." "Yes, you can." "No." Damien's voice cracked. "You don't understand. When Victoria shot you, something inside me died. I watched you collapse. I watched the blood pour out of you, and in that moment I realized I'd rather burn the entire world to the ground than watch you die." Amelia felt tears streaming down her face. "So you're going to get yourself killed instead? That's your solution? It's the only one I have." "That's bullshit, and you know it." Damien stared at her, his chest heaving. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to choose life. I want you to choose us." "There is no us. There can't be." "Why not?" "Because everyone I love ends up hurt. My parents died because of this world. You were shot because of this world. I'm poison, Amelia. I destroy everything I touch." Amelia stepped forward until they were inches apart. "Then destroy me, because I'm not leaving. I'm not walking away. I'm staying right here until you stop punishing yourself for things you can't control." "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do. I'm asking you to be human again." For a long moment, Damien just stared at her. Then he collapsed. Not physically, but emotionally. All the rage and grief and exhaustion that had been holding him together for the past 3 days finally gave out, and he sank to his knees on the concrete floor like a marionette with cut strings. Amelia knelt beside him, ignoring the screaming pain in her abdomen, and wrapped her arms around him. Damien buried his face against her shoulder and broke. He didn't cry. Men like Damien didn't cry. But his entire body shook with the weight of everything he'd been carrying, and Amelia held him through it, her fingers tangled in his hair, whispering that it was okay, that she was alive, that they would figure this out together. Behind them, Marcus quietly left the room, giving them privacy. When Damien finally pulled back, his eyes were red. "I can't lose you." "You won't." "You can't promise that." "No." but I can promise I'll fight like hell to stay alive. And I need you to promise the same thing." Damien looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay. Okay. Okay." Amelia helped him to his feet. "So what now? We can't just pretend the last 3 days didn't happen. You've made enemies, real ones." "I know." "So what's the plan?" Damien looked at the maps on the wall, his expression hardening. "We finish this, but we do it smart." "What does that mean?" "It means no more killing unless absolutely necessary. It means using strategy instead of violence. It means becoming the man you thought I could be instead of the monster everyone expects." Amelia felt hope flicker in her chest for the first time in days. "You think you can do that?" "I don't know, but I'm going to try." The next 48 hours were a blur. Damien called in every favor he'd earned over the years. He reached out to neutral crime families and offered them deals. He exposed Victoria's betrayal to the organizations she'd manipulated, proving he wasn't the weak link she'd claimed he was. Most importantly, he contacted the Sterling family directly. Victoria's father, Richard Sterling, was a 70-year-old man who'd spent the last decade building legitimate businesses on top of his criminal empire. He was ruthless, but pragmatic. And when Damien presented him with evidence that Victoria had murdered Vincent Crowe and attempted to steal the Blackwood Empire, Richard listened. They met in a neutral location, a private dining room in one of Chicago's oldest restaurants. No weapons, no bodyguards, just two men sitting across a table discussing the future. Amelia insisted on coming. Damien tried to talk her out of it, but she refused. "If we're doing this together, then we're doing this together. I'm not sitting on the sidelines anymore." So she sat beside Damien at the table, her stomach still healing, her hands folded in her lap, while Richard Sterling studied them both with cold blue eyes. "You killed my daughter," Richard said flatly. "Yes," Damien replied without hesitation. "She shot the woman I love. She betrayed me. She murdered Vincent Crowe in cold blood. I did what had to be done." Victoria was reckless, emotional. She let jealousy cloud her judgment. Richard leaned back in his chair. "I warned her about you, told her you were too dangerous to manipulate. She didn't listen." "I'm sorry for your loss," Amelia said quietly. Richard looked at her, surprised. "You're apologizing? For what?" "For being the reason she died. If Damien hadn't fallen in love with me, none of this would have happened." "That's not true," Damien said sharply. "Isn't it?" Richard waved a hand dismissively. "Love, hate, jealousy. These are all weaknesses in our world. My daughter died because she let her feelings control her actions. That's not your fault, Miss Hart. It's hers." He turned back to Damien. "The question is, what happens now? You've made enemies. The families who supported Victoria want your head. I can't stop them all." "I'm not asking you to stop them," Damien said. "I'm asking you to help me negotiate peace." "Why would I do that?" "Because a war benefits no one. It'll cost millions of dollars, dozens of lives, years of instability. Or we can end this now, with terms that benefit everyone." Richard studied him carefully. "What kind of terms?" "I'll give up territory, financial holdings, whatever it takes to make peace. But in return, they leave me and Amelia alone. No retaliation, no revenge. We walk away from this life, and they never come after us again." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "You'd give up your empire? For her?" "Yes." "Even knowing you'll be seen as weak?" "I don't care how I'm seen. I care about keeping her alive." Richard looked at Amelia. "You must be extraordinary." Amelia shook her head. "I'm not. I'm just a baker who fell in love with the wrong man." "Or the right one," Richard said thoughtfully. He stood up and extended his hand to Damien. "I'll arrange the meeting. You'll present your terms to the families. If they accept, you walk away. If they don't," he shrugged, "then you'll die fighting. Either way, this ends." Damien shook his hand. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You're about to walk into a room full of people who want you dead. The only reason they'll listen is because I'm vouching for you. If you make me look like a fool, I'll kill you myself." "Understood." Richard left the restaurant without another word. Amelia turned to Damien. "Are you sure about this?" "No, but it's the only way forward that doesn't end with both of us dead." The meeting was scheduled for the following night. Location: a private estate outside the city, owned by the Chen Syndicate. Neutral ground, no weapons allowed. Representatives from every major crime family in Chicago would be there. It was essentially a trial. Damien spent the day preparing. He worked with Marcus and his remaining loyal lieutenants, putting together a proposal that would satisfy the families without destroying everything he'd built. Amelia watched him work, her stomach still aching, her mind racing. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. If the families accepted Damien's terms, they could leave, start over, build a life that didn't involve blood and violence and constant fear. If the families rejected the terms, they'd both be dead by morning. That night, Amelia put on a simple black dress Marcus had brought for her. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a baker. Now she was walking into a meeting with Chicago's most dangerous criminals, trying to negotiate peace. Her life had become completely insane. Damien appeared in the doorway behind her, wearing a black suit, his hair combed back, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to come," he said. "Yes, I do. Amelia, we're in this together, remember? You don't get to protect me from this part." Damien walked over and stood behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay. If we survive tonight, if the families accept my terms and we walk away from all of this, would you still want me?" Amelia turned to face him. "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one. You fell in love with the man who sat in your bakery every morning. But that man was a lie. The real me is standing right here. The killer, the crime lord, the person who's destroyed lives. If we survive tonight, you'll be stuck with that version forever. So I need to know. Would you still want me?" Amelia reached up and touched his face. "The man in my bakery wasn't a lie. He was just one part of you. The violent part, the dangerous part. That's real too. But so is the lonely part. The broken part. The part that fell in love with me because I smiled at my reflection." She smiled sadly. "You're not a monster, Damien. You're just a man who's lived in a monster's world for too long. And yes, I still want you, all of you." Damien pulled her close and kissed her, gentle, desperate, like he was trying to memorize the feeling in case it was the last time. When they pulled apart, he whispered, "If anything goes wrong tonight, nothing's going wrong. If it does, I need you to run. Don't look back. Don't try to save me. Just run." "I'm not making that promise." Amelia sulked. "I said no. We survive together or we don't survive at all." Damien stared at her, his jaw tight. Then he nodded. "Together. Together." Marcus drove them to the estate in silence. The building was massive, a sprawling mansion surrounded by acres of manicured gardens. Security was everywhere, armed guards at every entrance, cameras covering every angle. Damien and Amelia were searched thoroughly at the door. No weapons, no phones, no way to call for help if things went wrong. Then they were led inside. The meeting room was a large hall with a long table in the center. Around that table sat 12 people, the heads of Chicago's most powerful crime families, men and women who controlled billions of dollars in illegal operations, people who'd killed hundreds, maybe thousands, to maintain their power. And they were all staring at Damien and Amelia like predators watching prey. Richard Sterling sat at the head of the table. "Sit." Damien and Amelia took the 2 empty chairs at the opposite end. Richard stood up. "We're here tonight because Damien Blackwood has requested terms. He wants to walk away from this life. In exchange, he's offering territory, assets, and financial holdings to be divided among the families present. The question is simple. Do we accept his terms, or do we reject them and eliminate him?" A woman at the table, Liu Chen, head of the Chen Syndicate, spoke first. "Why should we let him walk away? He killed Victoria Sterling. He destroyed Vincent Crow's organization. He's made himself a liability." "He killed Victoria because she tried to murder him," Richard said calmly. "She was acting outside the bounds of our agreements. Her death is regrettable, but justified." "And what about the baker?" Liu gestured toward Amelia. "She's a civilian, a witness. She knows too much." Damien's voice turned cold. "Touch her, and I'll kill everyone in this room." Silence. Liu raised an eyebrow. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. You're unarmed. I don't need a weapon to kill you." The tension in the room was suffocating. Amelia felt her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. Richard Sterling cleared his throat. Let's focus on the terms. Damien is offering 40% of his territory and 30% of his financial holdings. That's a significant concession. A man named Dmitry Volkov leaned forward. And what's to stop him from rebuilding once he walks away? What's to stop him from coming back in 5 years and trying to reclaim what he's given up? Me, Amelia said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Amelia stood up, her legs shaking but her voice steady. I'm the reason he's walking away. I'm the reason he's willing to give up everything. As long as I'm alive, he won't come back, because the only thing he cares about more than power is keeping me safe. Liu Chen studied her carefully. You're very brave, or very stupid. Probably both, Amelia admitted, but it's the truth. Damien Blackwood spent his entire life building an empire, and he's willing to give it all up for me. That should tell you something. It tells us he's weak, Dmitry said. No, Amelia countered. It tells you he's human, and maybe that's exactly what this world needs. Someone who remembers what it's like to care about something other than money and power. The room fell silent. Finally, Richard Sterling stood up. I'm calling for a vote. All in favor of accepting Damien's terms and allowing him to walk away peacefully, raise your hand. One hand went up, then another, then 3 more. Amelia held her breath. 6 hands. 7. 8. 9 votes in favor. 3 votes against. The majority had spoken. Richard nodded. The terms are accepted. Damien Blackwood, you are hereby released from all obligations to the families present. You will transfer the agreed-upon assets within 48 hours. In return, no one at this table will pursue retaliation against you or Amelia Hart. This agreement is binding. Damien stood up slowly, like he couldn't quite believe it was over. Thank you. Don't thank me, Richard said. Thank her. She's the only reason you're walking out of here alive. Damien looked at Amelia, and for the first time in days, she saw something other than grief in his eyes. Hope. They left the estate together, hand in hand, walking through the gardens toward the car where Marcus waited. Behind them, the massive mansion glowed against the night sky, a monument to power, violence, and everything they were leaving behind. Amelia's stomach still ached. Her hands still shook. But for the first time since Damien walked into her bakery wearing black gloves and carrying loneliness like armor, she felt something close to peace. They climbed into the SUV. Marcus started the engine. And as they drove away from the estate, away from the families, away from the life that had nearly destroyed them both, Damien turned to Amelia and said the words she'd been waiting to hear. It's over. Amelia nodded, tears streaming down her face. It's over. But deep down, she knew the hard part was just beginning. Because walking away from violence was one thing. Learning to live without it was something else entirely. The first 3 weeks were the hardest. Damien and Amelia left Chicago the same night the families accepted his terms. Marcus drove them to a private airfield where a plane was waiting, fueled and ready. No destination announced. No trail left behind. They just disappeared into the night sky, while the city they'd both loved and feared glowed below them like dying embers. They landed in a small coastal town in Northern California 24 hours later. Population 4,000. 1 main street, 3 restaurants. A harbor filled with fishing boats. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers were noticed immediately. Exactly the kind of place where no one would think to look for Chicago's former crime king. Damien rented a small house overlooking the ocean using cash and a fake name, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smelled like salt water and old wood, windows that rattled when the wind picked up. It was nothing like his penthouse, nothing like the empire he'd controlled. And that was the point. For the first week, neither of them knew what to do with themselves. Damien woke up every morning at 5, his body still programmed for a life that no longer existed. He'd stand by the window staring at the ocean, his hands twitching like they were reaching for a gun that wasn't there. Amelia would find him like that sometimes, silent and tense, looking like a man who'd forgotten how to be still. She understood. Her own nights were filled with nightmares, gunfire, blood, Victoria's cold smile before she pulled the trigger. Amelia would wake up gasping, her hand pressed against the scar on her stomach, convinced she was dying all over again. They were both broken, both learning how to exist in a world that didn't run on violence and fear. It was exhausting. One morning during the second week, Amelia found Damien sitting on the porch at dawn, staring at his phone. He'd been scrolling through news articles about Chicago. 3 crime families had already started fighting over the territory he'd given up. 2 people were dead. More would follow. "You can't fix it," Amelia said quietly, sitting beside him. "I know. Then stop reading about it." "I can't." Amelia took the phone from his hands and turned it off. "Yes, you can. That life is over. We left, remember?" "I remember." Damien's voice was hollow. "But I also remember building that empire from nothing. Losing it feels like losing a part of myself." "Maybe that's not a bad thing." Damien looked at her sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I mean, maybe the part of you that built an empire on blood and fear needed to die. Maybe that's the only way you survived this." "You don't understand." "Yes, I do." Amelia's voice turned hard. "You think you're the only one who lost everything? My bakery is gone. My apartment is gone. My entire life in Chicago is gone. I left behind friends, routines, a future I'd been working toward for years. So don't tell me I don't understand loss." Damien stared at her. "I'm sorry. I don't want an apology. I want you to stop mourning something that was killing you. It wasn't all bad." "Yes, it was. You were lonely, exhausted, surrounded by people who feared you instead of knowing you. You told me yourself, before you met me, you were already dead inside." Amelia reached out and took his hand. "So let that version of yourself stay dead, and figure out who you want to be now." Damien squeezed her hand but didn't respond, because he had no idea who he wanted to be. He'd spent 18 years becoming the most dangerous man in Chicago. He'd built his identity around power, control, and violence. Without those things, he was just a 34-year-old man with blood on his hands and no purpose left. That terrified him more than any enemy ever had. By the 3rd week, they started falling into a routine. Mornings, Damien would run along the beach, miles and miles, pushing his body until his lungs burned and his legs screamed, trying to outrun the restlessness that clawed at him constantly. Amelia would stay behind and experiment in the small kitchen, teaching herself to bake again, bread mostly, simple things that reminded her of who she used to be. Afternoons, they'd walk through town together. Damien hated it at first. The slowness, the small talk, the way people smiled at strangers like the world was safe. But Amelia insisted. So they'd walk hand in hand past the hardware store, the library, the coffee shop that sold mediocre pastries and called it artisan. Slowly, people started recognizing them. The quiet couple who'd moved into the old Brennan house. The man who never smiled and the woman with the scar on her stomach who always did. One afternoon, the owner of the local bakery, a 70-year-old woman named Margaret, stopped Amelia on the street. "I hear you used to bake," Margaret said. Amelia blinked, surprised. "How did you—" "Small town. People talk. I also hear you're looking for work." "I wasn't, actually." "Well, you should be. My assistant just quit to move to Portland, and I need help with the morning rush. Pay's not great, but the work's honest." Margaret studied her carefully. "You look like someone who needs honest work right about now." Amelia glanced at Damien. He nodded slightly, giving her permission she didn't need. "Okay," Amelia said. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow, 5 a.m. Don't be late." Amelia started working at Margaret's bakery the next morning. It was strange at first, going back to kneading dough, measuring flour, greeting customers who had no idea who she was or where she'd come from. But slowly, the work started to feel like breathing again. Natural, familiar, safe. Damien would show up every morning at 6:30, order black coffee, and sit in the corner booth reading the newspaper. Just like he used to do at Honey and Hearth. Except now, when Amelia smiled at him across the bakery, he smiled back. Small smiles, barely there, but real. 1 month after they arrived, Damien finally broke. It happened on a Wednesday night. Amelia came home from the bakery to find him sitting on the living room floor surrounded by documents, financial records, transfer agreements, liquidation papers, everything he'd signed away when he left Chicago. "What are you doing?" Amelia asked carefully. "Calculating how much I lost." "Why?" "Because I need to know." "No, you don't." Damien looked up at her, his eyes dark. "I gave up 40% of my territory, 30% of my assets, $20 million in liquid accounts. I spent 18 years building that empire, and I signed it away in one night. To save our lives. I know. Then why does it matter how much you lost? Because I don't know who I am without it. Damien's voice cracked. I've been Damien Blackwood, crime lord, since I was 17 years old. That's all I know how to be. And now it's gone, and I'm just nothing. Amelia sat down beside him on the floor. You're not nothing. Yes, I am. You're the man I fell in love with. That man was a lie. No. Amelia grabbed his face and forced him to look at her. That man was real. The version of you who sat in my bakery every morning, who listened to me talk about cinnamon rolls, who looked at me like I was the only good thing left in the world. That was you. Not the empire, not the violence. You. Damien's jaw tightened. I don't know how to be just me. Then learn. What if I can't? Then we figure it out together. Damien stared at her for a long moment. Then finally, he nodded. They spent the rest of the night burning the documents in the fireplace, watching 18 years of his life turn to ash. It felt like a funeral, a goodbye, a necessary death. When the last paper curled into blackness, Damien pulled Amelia close and whispered, Thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. Amelia kissed him. Never. Matia. 3 months in, they started healing. Damien found work on the fishing docks, hauling nets and repairing boats. The other workers didn't ask questions. They just accepted him as another pair of hands willing to do hard labor for modest pay. The work was brutal. Long hours, physical exhaustion, hands raw from salt water and rough rope. But Damien needed it, needed to feel his body working towards something simple and honest. Amelia continued at Margaret's bakery. She learned the rhythms of the small town, who liked their coffee with cream, who complained about the weather, who had kids in the local school. Slowly, she started feeling like herself again. Not the terrified woman who'd been shot in a warehouse, but the person who believed kindness mattered, even in a world that had tried to kill her for it. At night, they'd sit on the porch overlooking the ocean and talk. Not about Chicago, not about the past, but about the future. I want to open another bakery someday, Amelia said one evening. Something small, just for this town. No big ambitions, no franchises, just good food and good people. You'd be amazing at that, Damien said. Would you help me? He looked at her surprised. You want me involved? Of course. We're partners, aren't we? I don't know anything about running a bakery. You know about business, strategy, numbers. That's more than most people have. Amelia leaned against him. Besides, I think you'd be good at it. The quiet part. The building something instead of destroying it part. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Okay. Okay? Okay. Let's build something. Amelia smiled. Together? Together. 6 months after leaving Chicago, they were different people. Damien had put on weight, the healthy kind that came from eating regular meals instead of surviving on black coffee and violence. His hands were calloused from dock work, his skin tanned from hours in the sun. He still woke up early, still had nightmares sometimes, but the haunted look in his eyes had faded. Amelia's scar had healed into a thin white line across her stomach. She'd stopped flinching at loud noises, stopped checking over her shoulder constantly. She laughed more now. Real laughs that came from somewhere deep and genuine. They bought the old bakery space on Main Street, a tiny building that used to be a hardware store. It needed work. The floors were warped. The walls needed paint. The equipment was decades old, but it was theirs. They spent 2 months renovating it together. Damien handled the construction, ripping out old drywall, installing new counters, fixing the ancient oven that Margaret swore was older than the town itself. Amelia designed the layout, chose the colors, tested recipes until she found the perfect cinnamon roll. The day they opened, the line stretched down the block. Margaret was the first customer. She ordered a coffee and a cinnamon roll, took one bite, and smiled. You're going to put me out of business. Never, Amelia said, grinning. This town needs both of us. Damien stood behind the counter wearing a black apron, looking uncomfortable but trying. When the first customer asked if he was the owner, he hesitated, then said, Co-owner, it's her bakery. I just help. Amelia corrected him immediately. It's our bakery. Damien looked at her. Something passed between them, a shared understanding of how far they'd come, how much they'd survived, how unlikely their happiness was. Then he smiled, a real smile, the kind Amelia had been teaching him for 6 months. Our bakery, he repeated. 1 year after leaving Chicago, Damien proposed. He did it early one morning before the bakery opened, when they were alone in the kitchen prepping for the day. No fancy dinner, no elaborate plan, just Damien pulling a simple gold band from his pocket and setting it on the counter beside the flower. I don't have a speech prepared, he said. I'm not good at words, but I know I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building things instead of destroying them, choosing peace instead of violence, being the man you see when you look at me instead of the monster I used to be. Amelia stared at the ring, tears streaming down her face. You were never a monster. I was, but you loved me anyway. I love you because underneath all the violence, you were just lonely, and so was I. Damien picked up the ring and held it out. Marry me. It wasn't a question. It was a plea, a hope, a promise that they could build something permanent out of the wreckage of their past. Amelia took the ring and slid it onto her finger. Yes. They got married 3 months later in a small ceremony on the beach. 20 guests, no press, no bodyguards, just the people from town who'd become their friends, Margaret crying in the front row, and Marcus standing beside Damien as his best man. Marcus had visited twice since they'd left Chicago. Both times he'd brought news about the families, the wars, the power struggles. Damien always listened politely, then changed the subject. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer advice. That world was dead to him now. At the wedding, Marcus pulled Damien aside. You look happy. I am. Good. You deserve it. Do I? Marcus smiled. Yeah, you do. After the ceremony, Damien and Amelia walked along the beach alone, hand in hand, waves crashing against their feet. I never thought I'd have this, Damien said quietly. What? Peace. A normal life. Someone who loves me for who I am instead of what I can give them. Amelia squeezed his hand. You almost didn't. We almost died for this. I know. Was it worth it? Damien stopped walking and turned to face her. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink behind them. The ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon. And standing there in his suit with sand in his shoes and his wife beside him, Damien Blackwood finally understood what happiness felt like. Yes, he said. It was worth everything. 2 years after leaving Chicago, they had their first real test. A man walked into the bakery one Tuesday morning, mid-50s, expensive suit, cold eyes. He ordered a coffee and sat in the corner booth, watching Damien work behind the counter. Amelia noticed him first. Do you know him? Damien glanced over and went very still. Yes. Who is he? Thomas Brennan. He runs operations for the Russo family out of New York. Amelia's stomach dropped. What's he doing here? I don't know, but we're about to find out. Thomas waited until the morning rush died down, then approached the counter. Damien Blackwood, long time. Thomas. Nice place you've got here. Quiet. Peaceful. Not what I expected from Chicago's former king. I'm not that person anymore. So I've heard. Everyone has. You gave it all up for love. Some people think it's romantic. Others think it's pathetic. Damien's jaw tightened. What do you want? Nothing. I'm just passing through. Thought I'd check in. Make sure the rumors were true. Thomas glanced at Amelia. You must be the baker. The woman worth $20 million and 40% of Chicago's criminal territory. I'm his wife, Amelia said firmly. Of course. My apologies. Thomas turned back to Damien. I won't take up more of your time. I just wanted to see for myself if it was real, if Damien Blackwood really traded everything for a simple life. It's real. And you're happy? Yes. Thomas studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled. Good. The world needs more stories like yours, proof that men like us can change. He pulled out a business card and set it on the counter. If you ever need anything, protection, resources, an old favor called in, you call me. You earned that much." Then he left. Amelia stared at the business card. "Are we safe?" "Yes." Thomas showing up was a message. "The families know where we are, but they're leaving us alone. We kept our end of the deal. They're keeping theirs." "You're sure?" Damien pulled her close. "I'm sure. It's over. We're free." And finally, after 2 years of looking over their shoulders, they believed it. 5 years after leaving Chicago, their bakery had become the heart of the town. They'd expanded twice, hired 3 employees, built a reputation for the best cinnamon rolls on the entire coast. People drove hours just to taste Amelia's pastries and meet the quiet couple who ran the place with genuine warmth. Damien had changed completely. He smiled now, laughed even. He knew every regular customer by name, remembered their orders, asked about their families. The violence that once defined him had been buried so deep that sometimes even Amelia forgot it had ever existed. But she never forgot what it took to get here. One evening after closing, they sat on the porch of their house overlooking the ocean. Amelia was pregnant, 6 months along, carrying a daughter they'd already named Hope. "Do you ever regret it?" Amelia asked quietly. "Regret what?" "Leaving, giving up everything, choosing this life instead of that one." Damien was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes I think about it. Wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed, if I'd kept fighting instead of walking away." He reached over and placed his hand on Amelia's stomach, feeling their daughter kick. "But then I remember what I would have lost, and I know I made the right choice. Even though it cost you everything?" "It didn't cost me everything. It gave me everything." Damien looked at her seriously. "Before I met you, I had power, money, fear. But I didn't have a life. I was just surviving. Now I'm living, and that's worth more than any empire." Amelia felt tears streaming down her face. "I love you." "I love you too." They sat in silence, watching the sun set over the ocean, their hands intertwined, their daughter growing between them. And for the first time in 5 years, Amelia truly believed they were going to be okay. 10 years after leaving Chicago, Damien Blackwood stood behind the counter of Hart and Blackwood Bakery and watched his daughter serve her first customer. Hope was 9 years old, blonde like her mother, with her father's serious eyes and her mother's warm smile. She handed an elderly woman a cinnamon roll and change with practiced efficiency, then waved goodbye as the customer left. "Did I do it right?" Hope asked, turning to her father. "Perfect," Damien said, pride evident in his voice. Amelia emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of fresh bread. "Your daughter just made her first sale. We should celebrate." "She's our daughter," Damien corrected. "She gets the work ethic from you, the charm from me." "Fair enough." They closed the bakery early that day and took Hope to the beach. She ran ahead of them, chasing waves and collecting shells, her laughter carrying on the wind. Damien and Amelia walked slowly behind her, hand in hand, gray starting to show in Damien's hair, laugh lines forming around Amelia's eyes. "Do you think we should tell her?" Amelia asked quietly. "About Chicago. About who you used to be. Someday, when she's old enough to understand." "What will you say?" Damien thought about it. "The truth. That I was a bad man who did terrible things. But I met a woman who smiled at her reflection and she made me want to be better. So I became better. That's a good story. It's our story." They reached the water's edge. Hope ran back to them, her hands full of shells, her face bright with joy. "Look what I found," she shouted. Damien crouched down to examine her collection. "These are beautiful, just like you." Hope beamed, then ran off to find more treasures. Amelia watched her go, then looked at Damien. "We did it. We actually built a life." "We did." "Was it worth it? All the pain, the fear, almost dying." Damien stood up and pulled Amelia close, his arms wrapping around her like armor against a world that had tried to destroy them both. "Yes," he said firmly. Every single moment was worth it. And standing there on the beach with his wife in his arms and his daughter's laughter echoing across the waves, Damien Blackwood finally understood something he'd spent his entire life searching for. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future so beautiful that the past couldn't touch it anymore. He'd been Chicago's most dangerous man. A killer, a crime lord, a monster who'd destroyed lives without hesitation. But now he was something better. A husband, a father, a baker. A man who'd learned that love was stronger than violence, that peace was harder than war, and that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was walk away from everything you knew and choose to become someone new. Amelia leaned into him, her head resting against his chest, her hand finding his. "I'm glad you smiled at your reflection that day," Damien whispered. Amelia smiled against his shirt. "I'm glad you were watching." And as the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Damien Blackwood closed his eyes and felt something he'd never thought possible. Complete and total peace. The kind of peace that came from knowing you'd survive the fire and come out the other side still human. The kind of peace that came from choosing love when the entire world demanded violence. The kind of peace that only existed when you finally stopped running from who you were and started building who you wanted to become. Behind them, Hope called out that she'd found a perfect shell. Damien opened his eyes and smiled. Then he took his wife's hand, walked toward his daughter, and stepped fully into the life he'd traded an empire to build. A life where cinnamon rolls mattered more than territory, where morning sunlight was more valuable than blood money, where a woman's smile was worth more than the entire criminal underworld. It wasn't the life Damien Blackwood had planned. It was better. And standing there on that beach with his family, with the ocean stretching endlessly before him and the past finally buried behind him, Damien understood the truth that had saved his life. Sometimes love didn't arrive quietly. Sometimes it crashed into your world wearing determination and kindness, looking at you like you were worth saving even when you'd stopped believing you deserved it. And sometimes, if you were brave enough and broken enough and desperate enough to change, love gave you a second chance. Damien Blackwood had taken that chance, and it had given him everything.